Last week we kind of switched up the introductions, and I went around and asked everybody what has made them happy today. So I think I'm gonna do that again today, because again the weather is crap, and it was really fun hearing what had made everybody happy that day. So I'll start with Caroline.
I just had smoked salmon and scrambled eggs for lunch, so that made me happy.
That's great. Emma?
He was on mute, helpfully. I'm looking forward to, does that count?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to a physio appointment this afternoon.
Ah.
Wow. Actual real human-to-human contact physio appointment.
Ah, I see. Oh, that's great. Helen.
Yeah, hi everybody. Mine's a bit food related. I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
In that I've just had some lunch with my husband and my 2 teenage boys. And that's a joy about working from home.
Amazing. It's a work-life balance that we're all getting back through COVID. It's one of the perks.
One of the perks.
Yeah. Helen?
Other Helen? Yeah, hi. I'm not sure if my video's on because my computer's being a bit weird, but what am I looking forward to? I'm looking forward to, hopefully, if the rain stops, going out to meet some friends in the park later for a chat and a drink. High quality chat we've decided we need. So I'm looking forward to.
Amazing. Helen Day.
Oh, sorry, I did me before. I beg your pardon. I was. Yeah, you're sorry.
Oh. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm losing track.
Teenage boys, sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm losing track already. I'm going down the list. It's fine. Jenny.
Hey, hi. Well, it was kind of food related because I've got a cheese and ham toasty. Yay, I'm loving that. But equally as well, I've had an air conditioning unit delivered yesterday, so I am sat in a temperature controlled office. I cannot tell you how excited I am about that.
Well, thank you. Cran? Oh, maybe she can get her sound working. We'll skip past her for now. Lolita.
I'm happy that we've had confirmed today that our builders are going to start our big renovation on the 29th of June. Ask me in a couple of weeks and I'll probably be miserable, but so far so good.
Great, thank you. Louise.
Hi, yeah, one of the perks of home working, playing Stickle Bricks with my daughter this morning.
I have no idea what that is. Is that a children's game?
It's a bit like Lego, but with bits of building blocks you can put together.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Maria.
Oh gosh, I've got, yeah, I'm happy that I went out this morning before it started raining, and I discovered I grow some veggies, so I discovered that I've got the beginnings of a tiny courgette.
Amazing.
So I'm happy about that.
Are you growing anything else?
Oh, loads, yeah. Broccoli, tomatoes, courgettes, cucumbers, beans, peas, lots, yeah.
Sounds good. Amazing. Mark Thompson.
Thank you, Rosie Jarvis. I missed the question. I was getting a water.
Oh, that's right. What has made you happy today?
Oh, it's to come. I'm playing golf later, and the weather is going to be really nice tonight. It's going to be really nice. 4:30 in London. Sun's coming out.
Have any new clubs arrived yet?
No, that's a race against time, but I'll play regardless. Helen, you'll be fine in the park. It's going to be nice.
Cool. Silke?
I just had a really exciting chat with Valerie, actually, and we were talking about people that we both know, discovered some exciting common ground, and talking about dreams of the future.
Great. And Valerie?
I was going to say the same thing, but thank you, Silke. I'm looking forward to today the Red Arrows and La Patrouille Française to celebrate the 18th of June, the 80th anniversary of the 18th of June 1940 appeal from Charles de Gaulle. So that's a big day.
Amazing. A little bit of a history lesson in this session today. And Willorna?
I'm looking forward to my Ocado shop later because I'm going to make some cake. I am going to try a polenta cake, and I've got some mascarpone cheese to have it with.
Amazing. That sounds delicious. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Today on this episode, we have Willorna and Helen. They are both going to be sharing with us how their organizations have been adapting through COVID and what the future of work looks like for them. And then Willorna has a little bit to share about herself, about some work she's been doing in Sierra Leone and a book that she's written. So Willorna, would you like to start off and just share with us a little bit about the community that you started in February, I think?
Yes, so I was born in the UK, but I actually grew up in Sierra Leone. I came back to the UK when I was 14, but I have still very strong links with the country. Beautiful, sunny, lovely people, lovely food. So it's really like my second home. So being in HR, you know, I'm very passionate about HR and driving forward the HR agenda. So I've got friends based in Sierra Leone who used to live in the UK, and so basically people from the diaspora that have gone back and are trying to improve things, you know, in Africa, in Sierra Leone. So I've got a close friend who runs a HR consultancy business, and she has most of the contracts with international organizations. And so they had this thing about setting up a HR institute for HR professionals in Sierra Leone for about 4 or 5 years, but it never got, you know, nothing happened. And so last year, around the autumn, I decided I was going to spend my birthday, which was in February, in Sierra Leone. And I said to her, how about we have a conference to launch our institute? Because a lot of groundwork had been done with by her and some other people. They've set up the constitution, they've got all the paperwork, the legal stuff, but they hadn't actually launched or nothing was happening. So I said, how about we have a conference 3 days after my birthday, and, you know, we launched the institute. So I went along, had a wonderful birthday with my family, and then a few days later, we had a conference to launch the Institute of HR Sierra Leone. So I'm now on the, so basically we're setting up right now. We're trying to do some research to find out, for example, with COVID right now, we're trying to find out what's happening, how organizations have responded to COVID. We're trying to find out what the state of HR is in the country so that we could then shape and inform policy. So for example, the Sierra Leonean labor laws are still where the Brits left it with us when we gained independence in 1961. So the labor laws are quite old and archaic, haven't moved on. So I'm on a mission with my colleagues to change that, to make it more 21st century, and also to make it attractive for business to go into Sierra Leone to invest. So that's one of the things we want to do. And then we want to upskill HR professionals. We want to be the recognized membership organizations for HR professionals. So I'm on the setup committee as their committee, and I'm also part of the research and policy group. We've just done, actually in the middle of a survey right now to find out how people have been responding to COVID. And we're going to take the government, the Minister of Labour and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's quite exciting. I'm happy, really a passion of mine to give back and to develop the country. I mean, Sierra Leone, Freetown was the Athens of West Africa. It used to be the jewel and the crown of Africa. I know that Helen is not what's on here right now, but you know, Sierra Leone used to be really doing really well in terms of education, in terms of, you know, Sierra Leone has, you know, good citizens and people who've made valid contributions, but the country has actually got, as most African countries, is really struggling now and needs to be developed. So I'm hoping that I can make that contribution.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I'll come back with another question for you after I give Helen an opportunity to introduce yourself and your organization.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. It's really lovely to be invited today. great to see lots of different people and hear all your happy stories. I love that. So I'm head of HR at St Luke's Hospice, and St Luke's is a charitable hospice. So whilst we kind of take guidance from the NHS because we're a healthcare organisation, we're not kind of bound by the NHS rules, if you like. Actually, finding our own way through this period of time, with pretty much a 50% drop in income, and still all the kind of rules and health and safety measures and clinical changes needed to be put in place. So it's kind of quite a challenging time for us. We provide palliative care to about 6,000 people last year across Sheffield, and that's providing support to families as well as the patients themselves. And we're quite a complex organisation, really. We're not huge. We've only got about 240 staff, but we're quite complex in the sense that we have a range of professions. So we've got obviously doctors and nurses and physios and OTs and all that kind of thing, right through to hospitality services and fundraisers and clinical administrators. So it's quite a broad range of people from an HR perspective. Shall I just really briefly, Rosie, say a bit about how we've managed COVID? And
yeah, go ahead. Yep. Go
okay. Ahead. I don't want to pinch time from Willorna either.
No, that's fine.
So thinking back to a little time ago, 4th of March it was, we had a communications and feedback meeting, and essentially at that meeting we all got a piece of kind of A3 paper and decided to look and examine what our essential services were, what we could achieve with people, whether that's on site or at home. And you'll appreciate that some of our staff, a lot of our staff are on site delivering the palliative care services, as well as in people's homes. And then what does that look like? Have we got the things in place in people's houses to allow them to work from home? And so we did a real kind of literally a paper exercise on that. And then, like many other people, we've just built up and adjusted and adapted that plan. And we've gone from having kind of 3 COVID-19 meetings a week to 2 a week. And in that room, we have, and this is where I think the role of HR changes just slightly, which is in a good way, is that there's now much greater collaboration, I think, between all the different teams. And where, like sometimes you'd have the HR piece or the people piece would just automatically fall to HR. Actually, we've got clinicians and consultants and senior nurses taking a role in that kind of HR piece as well. And so that, our role has kind of changed. We very much are guided by the government guidance around the health and safety piece, but we've also introduced lots of things around wellbeing, where we're supporting people in different roles. So we've got people who are in the bubble, so to speak, is what we've described it as, who are giving that direct patient kind of contact, and people in the kind of outer bubble, if you like, who are supporting that, and then people on furlough. So we've adapted and kind of changed our approach to wellbeing in line with what those people need. And that's included a lot of engagement and surveys and trying to understand a bit more about how they're feeling. So, yeah, and I guess the next piece for us, perhaps we'll talk about in a moment, but looking to the future, is a whole nother kind of ball game for HR, I guess.
Willorna, would you mind also explaining a little bit about how your organization's adapted throughout the process of lockdown and what changes you've had to make?
Sure. So I work for the Association of Commonwealth Universities. I'm the senior HR business partner. We work within the higher education space. So the actual strategy is basically build a better world through higher education. So we're into supporting universities, supporting research. We run scholarship programs on behalf of the UK government. So we have different teams, different client group, but mostly sort of people with academic background and people with a background in international development. So we manage the government, the FCO, the Foreign Office's flagship scholarship program called the Achieving Scheme. And we also run the Marshall Awards and the Commonwealth Fellowships. And these are all programs that basically essentially allow high performance individual future leaders to come and study at the UK's top universities. So managing that program is a big part of our work as well. So we have university students who are in the UK studying. So imagine what would have happened with COVID, with our universities having to deliver courses online, supporting them. Some people got anxious and wanted to go back. So our teams were really supporting all of that, as well as the research team and the academic team. So basically, I was actually away when COVID really kicked off. So I came back and straight away joined the task force. So we used to have meetings every single day. Those meetings are now kind of twice a week. So just like Helen shared, it was a case of looking at our essentials, what we needed to do, even looking across the board in terms of staff capacity, where people might not have as much work to do. So we haven't had to furlough anyone because we've actually looked at capacity within the organization and looked at where we could actually move people on to support people who actually needed more capacity. So we've had to move people to working virtually. The organization has actually gone. We have lots of events. We normally put on lots of events for scholars, for researchers. All of those events have gone online. We're now calling it ACU Digital now. It's actually presented quite an opportunity because where in the past we would actually have to travel to attend an event, we've actually been able to run these events online, and we've noticed that we've got more attendance to these events. So for example, I'm part of the HR and higher education community. So we have 500 member universities across the world, and the HR and HR in HE communities for HR professionals working in universities. So the first event I helped to organize was an event for HR professionals on how universities were responding to COVID. So we had the HR director of University of Sheffield attend that webinar to share. We had university HR professionals from university in Australia and Canada and India as well. So it was really nice to see the global perspective. And what was basically striking was that we're all kind of having the same issues. We're all, the same challenges, the virtual. The only difference was, for example, India, where people can't really lock down like they do in the West. The poor people, the average Indian person can't really be on lockdown because they have to go out every single day to get food. That was really an eye-opener. And it reminded me of the situation in Sierra Leone as well. Not everyone, you're middle class, you're in a nice house, you can lock down. Your children can, have their lessons online. I've got friends in Freetown, in Accra, in Abuja. People are living like we live in the UK. But the average person in a developing country doesn't have that. It's really tricky how they're going to lock down when every single day they have to go out to buy food, or they don't have sanitation facilities in their homes. So it was really good to see globally how COVID has really affected organizations. So going forward, it has presented some opportunities in terms of not everyone was working from home all the time. Now we could see that some roles that perhaps we thought we couldn't do at home, we're doing from home now. So looking forward, the organization is really embracing some of the opportunities that will come out of COVID in terms of work-life balance and supporting people who want more time at home. And looking to our memberships, looking at the universities we support, this is going to help us to collaborate even more internationally. So yeah, but also staff wellbeing has been at the heart of it all. So there's been lots of comms, there's been lots of surveys, engagement. Now we're looking at the transition back to the workplace. We're not calling it return to work, we're calling it transitioning back to the workplace.
I like the transition. Can you hear that?
Yeah, you went a bit.
Is that okay now? Okay, I think it's done. Sorry about that. I was gonna say, I like how you call it transitioning back to work, because we are, returning is like saying you're going back to the normal, like how things were before, but really we're not going back to any kind of normal. It's a new normal. And so it's a good, slow, easy transition for everybody back into work.
Yeah, and they're working already. So it's like saying return to work means that we haven't really been working. So saying transition, and also because it's going to be staged, we're not just going to go back en masse every single day. We're looking at the building, looking at all what's possible. We're carrying out a risk assessment now. It's a lot of work, actually. It's really a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely. That brings me into my next point, actually, with just as an HR professional, everybody on here, you've all got a lot of work to do, a lot of workload right now. And I was just wondering how both of you have managed the changes through COVID-19 in your HR role. And I know, Helen, you said you've had opportunities to collaborate with different people on your team. So if you could just maybe share a little bit about if you've had opportunities to collaborate with different people in your teams and how you've kind of managed these changes yourselves.
Yeah, thanks, Rosie. So I think we all always did actually work quite well together and kind of across team and across departments. But I think this has just brought us together even closer. And actually, because the nature of the crisis that we've got is a clinical one, if you like, a medical one, that means that I think that the support groups have got much closer to the clinicians and actually understand probably even more now about their roles as well. So, for example, in the COVID-19 meeting, there would be a whole range of different people in that room, clinicians and support staff and hospitality staff. But also the really refreshing thing that I found is that it's not just the managers in those areas, it's the staff in those areas. And that's really, I think, something that we want to keep hold of. So one of my roles I see is just making note and taking note of all the things we want to keep hold of as we transition, good word, into the new normal, and it has truly meant that we've worked together. So, for example, we've got a number of our heads of department working at home, and some people have got teams as well they're looking after at home. So we've done a home working leads Zoom call. It's once a week. The chief exec facilitates it. And to actually have all those people in one room, so to speak, and our chief exec being engaged and engaging with those people, again, it's really helped, I think, to break down some of that kind of silo working that we can all creep back into, I think, pretty easily. So we'll look to keep hold of some of those things. And the HR role right now, a bit like Willorna was saying, is we're into this transitioning mode. And part of our role is guiding managers to become leaders or managers of remote teams. And for an organisation like St Luke's, which is fairly traditional, probably compared with other people who are on this call, this webinar, is that we're breaking out of that traditional HR mode and moving into how do we facilitate and help managers to manage their staff in a different way. And that then links in with making sure that they have not only the kind of practical protocols in place, and I've developed a kind of guide that helps with the practical stuff, but actually the more kind of subtle stuff about, how do I work with someone who is working from home? I need to build trust and trust that individual and give them autonomy to work from home. So we've got some learning to do and some guidance, I think, as HR professionals to give to managers around that. And if anything, I think we're moving from a kind of lean optimization, Toyota model, through to something that's much more about adaptability and flexibility as well. So looking at redeployment of staff and actually asking staff to take on different things, because that's just what we need to do at the moment. So yeah, there's a big piece for HR around all of this, and some of it's technical and some of it's more subtle, I think.
Wow.
Sorry, I put myself on mute. Willorna, did you have any thoughts to share on that at all?
Yeah, so HR has been really at the heart of most of this, supporting the organization. Both myself and the director of HR are in the COVID task force group, which includes our chief financial officer, our marketing and comms team. I noticed that it's actually enabled us. We've always worked very closely with other departments, but I've got closer to our senior executive team and senior management team. And there's a really good, collaboration is one of our values. So we have done that really, really well, like mucking in and doing things like I said earlier on about making sure that people had laptops. I was in there sort of trying to make sure that arrange couriers for people to get their laptops. So it's been huge because we've also got our BAU. We've had people join us during COVID. So we've done interviews online. I ran the corporate induction on Zoom a couple of weeks ago. So we've literally moved everything online and had to adapt really, really quickly to all of that. But it's been good because I'm quite creative and I do like a challenge. So, I mean, I've had days where I felt like it's too much. And trying to also, you know, well-being, trying to have that distinction between my work life and my home life. And we've also understood that it's difficult for some people because we've put out we did a survey actually to find out how many people had caring responsibilities, how many people had children that they were looking after or shielding, etc., etc. And we've tried to help each of those groups. So we've moved on to Zoom and Microsoft Teams, but on Teams, we've set up channels. So we have a social committee and a staff committee. So the staff committee is like the employee voice, whereas the social committee traditionally runs the Christmas parties, the summer parties, etc. And they've done quite well at setting up like virtual coffees, there's a group where they share recipes, photos, etc. We even ran a competition for children at Easter to design something. And so we really engage with staff as well as their families, because we know that at this time, it's not just about the employee, they're home with their family. So I think this is what I kept saying, that it's brought out the human in HR, because to see the CEO, you know, on a Zoom call talking about her family, talking about what she did at the weekend, it's not something that used to happen. So I'm quite pleased. I mean, there's some obviously the negatives of the pandemic, but I'm an optimist. I'm a half full person. So I'm trying to look at the opportunities and the good things that we could take forward coming out of the pandemic. And also the transition piece, we're trying to engage staff to find out how people feel about coming back to the office. So that will inform our planning.
Thank you. So my next question is, we've had a few comments coming through our registrations with certain challenges that people have been having with the lockdown situation, and a lot of people are asking about retaining staff during this crisis. And I was wondering if either of you have had experience with this, any difficulties with it, if you're happy to share, and if you have worked out any ways to prevent this from happening or just to improve retention.
Yeah, I mean, if you're happy for me to pick up that, Rosie, just for a moment. I mean, I think we've seen some fairly kind of normal, regular turnover with some people who perhaps we expected to move on. And I think we've had some where people have inevitably, through periods of furlough, had time to reflect and consider, and perhaps taken on retirement a little bit earlier than they might have done, or, you know, decided to potentially move away and do other things with their lives as well. So an interesting time, because I think it has given people time to reflect and think about what they want. And I think we'll see more of that as we go over the next kind of 6 to 9 months. In terms of retention, it's interesting because you often say, well, you don't leave a job, but you leave the people. And for us, the people who are currently working, and that's people within what I described as the bubble on site, through the surveys, we've seen them see much more camaraderie. So there's even more kind of closeness and teamwork, and what Willorna was saying about understanding people's lives a bit more. So in a way, it's actually brought people to feel, I think, more like they want to stay, because at the moment that gives them that little bit of stability and reassurance, whereas the people on furlough perhaps are taking time to consider and reflect and think about other things. I think it'll always be in our minds as we go next kind of, particularly over the next year or so. But I think we also have the view that actually sometimes that's a good thing, that people move on and look to do other things. And actually coming back to the optimism in us, I think it's a chance to say, well, actually, we need to look at things differently, and perhaps we need to look differently at that service, and that means we might want somebody different in that particular role. So we're looking at it with kind of an optimistic view. I think what we're also doing is just making sure that we are continuously kind of talking and engaging with all the different groups of our staff to kind of understand how they're feeling. And if we see something that is concerning or needs attention, then we will pick that up. And I have a wonderful staff support and wellbeing team around me, made up of a chaplain, a psychologist, an HR person, a bereavement officer, all sorts of different. And that means that they can then pick up calls and be a bit more kind of proactive about responding to how people are feeling if they're feeling a little despondent. Thanks.
And Willorna?
We haven't really had much issues around retention. Not many. I think only one person has left. I haven't seen much. I think people have been feeling perhaps they want to feel a bit more secure. So my sense is that people wanting to feel secure, not looking at this as a time to move on. And even we don't have a union, we're not unionized, and the staff committee actually asked whether we could look into having a union. So I'm wondering whether that's coming out of anxiety of wanting to have a union just in case that, we want to go down the route of, I don't know, restructure or redundancy or that kind of thing. So that's basically, I think right now, I'm just looking at the sort of national landscape as well, from what I'm reading, most people are sort of putting off their job hunting for now until perhaps things have settled a bit more.
Speaking of job hunting, Willorna, I know that you have written a book about maintaining your well-being while you're in the job hunting process. Could you maybe share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, so thanks, Rosie. Oh gosh, I'm about to talk about that now.
That's why I brought it up. You should talk about it.
Because I'm still an employee and I might need to look for a job one day again. But because I work with a lot of young people and support employability skills in schools. So I wrote a book on job hunting, and the title is Job Hunting: Myths, Secrets and Truths. And it's quite a light-hearted, simple, digestible book on the process. And my target audience is really young people, early careers. And yeah, so the book was launched last year and I've had really good feedback. There was somebody working with us last year on the project, and he had been trying to get into HR in the media industry for a long time, since he graduated about 5-6 years ago. And through my coaching and reading my book, he got his dream role. So I'm quite proud of that. So yeah, thank you. So yeah, I really am passionate about careers education, because I think that the same way I'm passionate about financial education, I don't think our young people get enough careers advice and financial advice when they're at school. And those are two key things that you need to, start up well to adults, to be able to adult really well, you need those things. So I support a school with a careers education, an inner London girls' school, through the government's enterprise advisor scheme. So I go in and I support them with career strategy. If they have to hold careers fairs for their students, I help on that. So I guess my book also helped that demographic.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Willorna. I guess I just have one last question for you both. Have you started at all thinking about returning to work, and have you started creating plans around returning to work? And what are the biggest challenges that you are facing, if you have?
I think that from what I'm seeing, people are very, very anxious about going back to work. I think some people, obviously myself included, have got used to this whole thing about not having to commute, etc. You can see that your job can be done at home. I mean, I used to work from home 1 day a week, but a lot of people want to have that flexibility to stay. And a lot of people are obviously anxious because the pandemic is still with us. So I think the challenges will be trying to get people to go back to that work environment. I think it's a change thing again, it's a change curve. So it was a process to get back to get used to working from home, the whole virtual piece. You've got used to that now, and then all of a sudden you have to uproot yourself and get back into that mode of getting on public transport, getting on the London Underground, etc., etc. So that is another change process. So I think that will be a challenge.
The challenge for us, Rosie, is actually really around the fact that we're in a healthcare setting, obviously, and so people need to be really reassured that we've got everything in place to make it as safe as possible for those people returning. And so we've got some really stringent kind of protocols going on. So part of their transitioning back, if they're coming back into the workplace, and I don't see many doing that. I think they'll be back, but working from home. Which has another set of challenges, but our anxieties are definitely around, I think, the healthcare piece. And what I'm thinking about doing is potentially setting up a bit of a buddying arrangement between someone who's been in the bubble and experiencing it and in full PPE every day and working extremely hard to deliver that patient care, to somebody who's perhaps coming back or transitioning back from furlough. And buddying them up to give them a little bit of kind of reassurance about what's gone on in the workplace. And we're also sending out photos of what the organisation looks like, because we look quite different at the moment, you know, screens and signage and loads of hand sanitizers all over the place. So we always had a bit of that, but so we're just trying to encourage them to visualize before they actually walk back in through the door. So that's just one of our challenges, really. And HR, I think, are pretty key at helping that happen. And again, another challenge is around managing remote teams, which I mentioned earlier. So I have a piece of work to kind of research and do on that.
Does anybody else have any challenges that they'd like to share that they're facing at the moment with returning to work at all?
I'll just add that the risk assessment piece is a big one as well. Again, like Helen said, you know, making sure we're showing people that the office environment will be safe, having hundreds of sanitizers around the place. What's the shape of the workforce? Do we have to go down the sort of restructure or any kind of route? So those are all things we need to think about. Financial, I mean, we get funding from the government. So in terms of, we know the government has spent a lot of money trying to support the economy through this. So what does that look like in the future in terms of government funding and partnerships and the things that we do? And even universities right now, it could be a challenging time for universities because of the lack of foreign students coming in, travel and that kind of thing. So really it is an uncertain time. So uncertainty is also a challenge for people.
Well, Lorna, do you have any, I was reading an article the other day about universities having troubles with trying to keep admissions up with the current situation, people kind of putting off college for another year, university for another year. Have you had any troubles with that at all? Have you heard anything about that?
So what universities are trying to do at the moment is trying to keep consistency as much as possible. So no university, as far as I'm aware, has said they're not coming back as yet. So they will come back. It's either they come back part virtual and part face-to-face. But I guess there are students abroad who are still a bit anxious about coming to the UK. But for students in the UK, everyone's keen to just get on business as usual, you know. It's bad enough those who haven't been able to take their GCSEs and their A-levels and have to have predicted grades. People want to start their course. But yes, everyone's kind of still uncertain and anxious about what university is going to look like. Because I've got 2 boys at university, so I know what's going on right now. One of them didn't come down, he's still up there. He's finished his last exam and coming down next week. The other one was at home and his university carried on virtually. So it is an anxious time. And I've got friends and family members who are due to start courses. They don't know if they're going to be starting. It's just a horrible time.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's all I had for today for both of you, Helen and Willorna. Did anybody else want to share any comments?
Apart from the fact it was really interesting to have both your perspectives from very different worlds. So thank you for sharing all that.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Nice to see everyone.
Lovely to meet you all. Thank you very much.
All right. Great.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Helen and Willorna. Thanks everybody for showing up, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.